Hi, my name is Dave Upthegrove, State Representative from the 33rd District, which includes the cities of Normandy Park, Des Moines, SeaTac, the south part of Burien, and the west half of the city of Kent. I am just south of SeaTac Airport in the city of Des Moines, in an area where the homes have been bought out over the years due to airplanes flying over the neighborhood. Recently, with the construction of the third runway being completed, I've heard from more and more people with very serious concerns about the impact of airplane noise on their quality of life. This is for a number of reasons. First is that the first runway, the one on the east of the airport, has been closed recently for repairs for a large period of time this summer. That means that a whole lot more flights are landing and taking off on the new third runway. And it's so loud that some people's homes shake, and I've heard from families where the tops of their trees have even been blown off by the vortex of airplane noise. I joined with my local colleagues to hold a series of town hall meetings late this summer in order to not only hear from constituents, but also give us all an opportunity to learn a little bit more about how these decisions are made, where and when do airplanes fly, who decides what runways are used. And we learned some important information. First of all, the federal government, the United States government, is the key player in this, because the Federal Aviation Administration is the agency that determines where and when airplanes fly and that approve runway use plans. Also is the federal funding, and thus we have to follow federal rules in order to determine who gets noise insulation and who's bought out. But after listening to folks and after getting together with my other local colleagues, we've come up with an agenda of how we want to move forward to try to respond to this challenge and this threat to our quality of life. Number one, we're asking the Port of Seattle, which operates SeaTac Airport, to fund something called a hush house. And that is an actual structure on the tarmac where when they have to do engine tests and run up their engine, the planes would actually go inside this hush house so that run-up noise doesn't disturb the neighbors so much around SeaTac. The second thing we want to do is get some restrictions placed on nighttime airplane noise. And this is difficult to do because the FAA has to approve this. So we're asking the Port of Seattle to join us in making the formal request of the FAA through something called a Part 161 study to get permission to limit noisier planes at night. The third step we want to take is to increase the funding available to insulate people's homes around the airport. In addition to the federally funded mitigation, we want to go beyond that and fund people who are not currently receiving noise mitigation. And we would like the Port of Seattle to use a portion of their port property tax, the taxes you pay to the Port of Seattle. We think some of that ought to come back. It's very frustrating when your neighbor on one side of the street is eligible for noise mitigation. You're impacted just as much by noise, but you're not eligible. So we need to do more noise mitigation. And fourth, we think it's time to move forward more aggressively with the siting and planning for a new airport in Washington State so that all the future aviation capacity doesn't get concentrated on our community. And we'll be introducing legislation in Olympia this year to do that. So I'd like to ask for your help to join in asking the Port of Seattle, number one, to fund a hush house to reduce the noise from engine run-ups, to join us in asking the FAA for restrictions on nighttime flights, to support legislation to direct some of that port property tax into increased noise mitigation, and finally to support legislation to move forward with siting a new airport. We all know we live around an airport and that there will be noise, but we think with some straightforward measures and by holding all levels of government accountable, we can improve our quality of life. My father was an airline pilot. I grew up in Burien in the shadow of the airport. You know, the aviation industry put food on the table at my house. It is an asset to our community, but there's also burdens that come with it, and we need to all work together to understand how we can best advocate for some positive improvements to try to protect our quality of life. Again, my name is Dave Upthegrove, and I would welcome your thoughts, your inputs and suggestions. Contact information will be at the end of the program.